If you avoid talking about money with your partner, your spouse, your significant other, because you are scared that it might turn into a fight, or worse, it's going to confirm something that you just don't want to hear, then this is for you. Money is one of the most common sources of tension in a relationship, but it doesn't have to be. And so that's why today I am going to be covering why it's important to align your finances with your partner, why money is so hard to talk about, and how you can start having money conversations with your partner. So let's get into it. Why is it so important to align your finances with your partner? Well, harmonizing your finances with your significant other is not necessarily about having identical money habits or trying to merge all your finances together overnight. It's more of aligning and harmonizing your financial goals, your financial habits, getting more clarity on all of that, and just communicating about your finances, your financial goals, your hopes and dreams. All of that is important because when both of y'all, both partners understand where your money is going and what you are working towards, how you make your decisions, then that financial stress will decrease and y'all will trust each other more and have a better relationship overall. Now, aligning your finances and trying to harmonize is not necessarily all about spreadsheets and pulling out budgets or all of that. It's more of understanding each other's financial goals and creating a shared direction. Because what happens if you don't talk about money? Well, then a lot of assumptions happen instead of having clarity. And I know that's something that I had at the beginning. I struggled with that with my relationship with my husband. And that led to a little bit of resentment building up. And that happens because I was assuming things and I had my own financial goals and he had his own goals as well. And so they felt more like they were competing with each other versus complementing each other because we're not talking about it. Instead, once we started talking about it, then it felt like our decisions, everything we did with our finances was more of a collaborative thing versus, like one or the other trying to control. And I know I dealt with controlling issues. And a lot of that stemmed from, financial anxiety. And so did he. He dealt with some financial anxiety. And so these goals that I had and that he had are not as clear. But when you do talk about it, then obviously everybody understands where the direction where you're trying to go and what each other is trying to achieve. And y'all can motivate each other. And again, that financial stress, becomes more manageable. Y'all support each other and it becomes less overwhelming. But I want you to understand that aligning your finances doesn't mean that you have to agree on every detail. Because again, each person is their own person. They have their own hopes and dreams, regardless that you're in a relationship. Of course, you're going to share joint goals as a couple, but if you're in, like, you have your own career, they have their own career, and you want to do a few things, like for example with me, I invest in real estate. That's one of my passions, and he is more of just like, having stable income, providing for the family. So we have our own like separate goals, but also we have our joint goals. But doing this requires honesty, transparency, and you have to be willing to understand each other's financial values and goals. You need to have those things to be able to move forward with having some money talks. But why does it feel like having these money conversations, they feel like they are so hard to talk about it and bring it up? And I know that was a case for myself and my husband at the very beginnings of our relationship. It was very hard to bring up and on both sides. And that's because money is very personal because it reflects how we were raised, what we fear, what each of us believe success looks like, and it also reflects how safe we feel. If we feel insecure about our finances, if there's like financial anxiety, or we're not happy about some of our choices, then it becomes hard to talk about it. So there's a lot of financial avoidance there. And again, some of us might be in different starting points. I know I was at that time with my husband at that point in time. I was, I guess, more ahead in the game than he was because he has his own financial journey and I had a different financial journey, and I had different obstacles. And so our points in our own financial journeys were different. So that can cause some emotion right there, feeling like maybe, oh, I'm not where you're at, feeling like they're behind or whatever. But also you might have different family obligations. For my husband, he has a son, and so he has to pay for him. And then for me, I have to think about being able to supplement my parents' retirement. So when I'm creating financial goals, I have that in mind. And when he's creating his financial goals, he has that in mind. And it could get a little bit emotional as well, especially if you are not communicating that. And then again, the shame from maybe getting into debt or just your spending habits or just feeling like you don't know enough, like you lack financial literacy. And a lot of people, just feel shame around that. So there's a lot of reasons why it's so hard to have these money conversations, especially with someone that you love. But it's important to understand that avoiding the conversation is not protecting the relationship. It does the opposite because, again, finances is the number one reason for divorce. So money is a huge stressor in relationships. And it doesn't have to be. Most couples don't necessarily fight about money off the bat. I know we didn't really fight about it at the beginning because, well, for the most part, especially when it's a brand new relationship or early, in the years, then you want to just avoid the tension. So you stay silent about it and you don't want to talk about it, and you're just kind of avoid the issue because you don't want to start a fight. But then that creates distance and resentment, as I mentioned earlier, especially if you feel like you're the one that's the more responsible one because you're the one that's trying to have the conversations. And the other one may feel like they're being judged or being shut down. Yeah, it causes a strain in on the relationship. But also, I want you to know that you can love your partner very deeply, but you still feel anxious about your financial future together. And that tension doesn't mean that something is wrong with the relationship. It doesn't mean that y'all are not compatible. It just means that there's a obstacle that y'all have to work to overcome together. And that requires talking about it, right? So having these conversations. So how do you start having a conversation about money with your partner? Well, first, you want to set the scene, right? Like you need to create a safe space for both yourself and your partner to be able to have that honest, open conversation about money, which means you have to set up a safe and guilt free space. And in order to do that, you have to choose the right moment and the right time and place, right? You don't want to start talking about money during an argument or after an argument, realizing that something is going on there with finances. And so after an argument, you decide to, like, hey, I'm going to pull up a budget and I'm going to get a notebook and a pen and paper. And we are going to talk about all our finances and see where our money goes. That's so counterproductive, let me tell you, because I did that, and all it did was just cause more tension, more avoidance, more stress, and more distraction. And so it just resulted in more fighting because, nobody wants to talk about it. It feels more like a punishment at that point. And then on top of that, it becomes a negative reaction to your partner, to you, and again feels more like a punishment, and it's not a good situation to have these money conversations. So instead, you want to choose a time and place, and also be strategic of how you approach your partner. Don't go out there and be like, hey, we got to talk about our finances and this and that, right? Just approach it with more compassion. Like, hey, I want us to feel more aligned and less stressed about money. Let's set some time to talk about it and also set that tone. Like, hey, we're not going to fight. We're going to be respectful, but we also need to be honest and transparent and just set those expectations and set the scene to have that money conversation and maybe even have it, make it more fun, which is something that I'll talk about when I talk about, money dates. The next thing you want to do is to start with your financial goals or just goals in general. Don't start getting into the numbers because that can cause for your significant other to kind of like close up, to clam up, because once you start seeing those numbers on paper, then they might shut down. So it's a little bit easier to start with your financial goals and just figure out what finances means to each other. Like, what does financial security look like or mean to you? What is it that you are working towards? Because a lot of times that's misaligned as well. One partner may be working to just pay off debt, and then the other one is, going off to try to buy a house, and that's their goal in their mind as a joint goal in the relationship. Like, okay, we are going to go and buy a house, but your partner has debt and is worried about that debt, so wants to pay them off. So he's not thinking, or they're not thinking about buying a house right now. So starting with your goals is a good step to just set the scene, set the stage, and set that foundation of what your significant other is prioritizing. And then from there, then you can create your goals as a couple. Again, in that scenario, if mine was that as a couple, we should start looking for a house and want to buy our house, well, then realistically, we should also prioritize paying off that debt because that's going to affect buying the house. So then you can start creating your shared goals, which is going to come in handy once you get into the budget and start talking about debt and even investing. The next thing is you want to make sure, again, that both of y'all are honest about where you are at, which is why it's so important to create that safe space to be able to talk about income. Because now that you had your goals and you want to get into budgeting to start, let's say, paying off that debt, then you need to know how much is your partner bringing in, how much you're bringing in, how much do they owe, and what the spending habits are looking like. Because if y'all have a spending habit of like y'all are going out to eat all the time or whatever, then that needs to be addressed and adjusted based on whatever goal y'all are trying to work towards. But also support each other. Remember that some financial anxiety, some fears are going to come up, and you have to support each other and not judge each other during this process. And that's going to help make these conversations actually more effective and less stressful. And the next thing is you want to decide how you are going to manage your money together. So there is no right system to use as a couple. It really depends on what your preference is. Really, you can just decide to combine everything in one joint account and then pay everything from there and all that. Or you can decide like, oh, let's just keep our finances separate. You focus on your bills and I focus on my bills. Or you can use a hybrid approach. That is something that, me and my husband, we use a hybrid approach. We both have, well, we have a joint account, and then we both send money into that based on our budget for our expenses. And then we each have our own separate savings, our own separate accounts, and each of us gets to do whatever we want with that money. For me, I, invest and go thrifting or whatever, and he buys things that he wants, like Legos or video games or whatever it may be. And then he has his own like savings account for maybe like his truck or whatever things that he may want to buy. And same with me. But the key thing is that y'all both have to agree on something and y'all both have to understand the system that you end up choosing. But you want to also make sure that the responsibilities are clearly defined and that they are fair and transparent. So, one of the things that I want to emphasize is when you are creating these responsibilities, one of y'all may make significantly more money than the other. And this was the case with my relationship. I made a lot more than he did, a year ago. And so when we were deciding the budget for like our mortgage and expenses and bills and stuff, we did it proportional to our income, right? I cannot expect him to pay 50% when that is, to me, in my opinion, was financial abuse, and, making him use way more money when I make more money. And so I didn't think that was fair. So now it's the opposite. Now he makes more money and now it's different. Now he pays a bigger portion than what I do, right? And so you just want to keep that in mind and make it fair. Don't create a situation that promotes financial abuse. So, what do you want to avoid in these money conversations? These are some quick little rules to have. And if you want, you can write them down and have them visible when you are having these conversations, and maybe have like a hard stop, have a button or whatever that somebody presses if they feel like the other one is going in that direction, which is blaming each other or keeping score. I definitely was one of those that I had to overcome that, where I would blame things on myself and my husband, is like because I couldn't understand. And that stemmed from, again, my own financial anxiety and stuff. And then giving ultimatums. Like, if you don't do this, then we cannot move forward in the relationship. Because you have to be realistic. A lot of these things take some time. You can't set an ultimatum like, hey, if you don't pay your $50,000 debt by 3 months or 6 months, then, then we can't move forward in our relationship or whatever. It has to be realistic. And you want to avoid that, especially if you want to continue the relationship and work towards fixing whatever it is that you need to fix. And definitely don't want to make the other one feel even worse by blaming or keeping score, because that just adds to the financial anxiety and the trauma. And it's, financial abuse as well. The other thing you want to avoid is avoidance. You are going to be tempted to hide things, or just, not necessarily hide them, but not bring them up because you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to talk about that you ran up your credit cards. Now you realize that, it was a mistake, and, it's not fun to talk about these things, which brings the other thing. Don't talk at your partner, right? It's not a lecture, it's a collaboration. So you are talking together. So those are just some kind of rules of engagement, I guess, that you can have. Again, if it helps, have it on a piece of paper so that way it's visible, especially when you are brand new having these conversations. This might be helpful. Now, one thing that you can do to make these conversations a little bit, well, less stressful and more effective is to make it a date. Make it a money date. Make it fun. Maybe play some, some relaxing music or some hype music, whichever one y'all prefer. Make some snacks, just make it fun. Try to find ways to reduce that anxiety, and again, set your rules, set the time and place, and set the frequency of these dates, because you're going to have to continue to have these money conversations, because yes, you're going to set your goals and you're going to create your budget and all that, but part of making sure that y'all accomplish your goals and keep on track is to review them periodically, whether that's monthly or quarterly or whatever. So make sure you are creating some money dates. And this is going to help prevent small issues, because again, we are all human. We have been having our spending habits or our financial situation for a while. So you can expect that it's going to be an overnight thing, but keeping track of these things is going to help you address something faster and be able to get back on track. And it's also going to normalize the conversation. It's going to get easier over time. to have these conversations, and it's going to reduce that emotional charge that you have around money. So practice makes perfect. And one of the things that you also want to talk about during these money dates is celebrate those milestones, celebrate the small wins, talk about what went well financially, and but also address what was stressful. Maybe this past month your significant other had less hours, and that caused the your budget to kind of had to be adjusted because less income was coming in, or caused that you to kind of slow down on your progress toward your goals, again without making each other feel guilty or anything like that, but maybe just reflect on that and just talk about it, get that emotion out there, not negatively, right? Just, support each other, then motivate each other, and then talk about what's next. All right, what are we going to work on next month? Okay, talk about expenses that might be coming up. Maybe you need to fly to go visit family or something, but just keep it respectful. Make sure you have a set time limit. Don't be talking to, like, because then it becomes like a chore, right? You want to keep it light and make you look forward to the next one. So don't try to have like 3-hour long conversations and reflecting about your finances. And again, harmonizing your finances with your partner is going to be an ongoing process. It's not a one time conversation. It's going to be multiple conversations throughout the life of your relationship. And the goal isn't to eliminate every disagreement, but instead to create a system where money isn't something that's going to damage your trust or your connection or cause a big stressor in your relationship or strain the relationship, because it is going to create some stress, but you are going to have those tools and that system to help address that and be able to move forward. Because when couples learn to talk openly about money, then they make better decisions. You feel more supported, and then you start actually fulfilling and reaching those financial goals and building a financial life that actually reflects your values and what you want to accomplish with your relationship. So, yeah, if you want more of how to create a money plan, how to budget, I do have episodes on that, and I'll link them down in the show notes or in the description if you're watching on YouTube. I also have my money monthly planner. It is a budget. It also tracks your debt, your savings, all of that. That's free to download. It's a Google Sheet template that will be linked down below. But yeah, other than that, I will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and share this episode so others can also find this podcast. Don't forget to follow me on all my social medias listed in the show notes below, where you can also find resources to help you in your financial journey. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the podcast, you can find that information in the show notes. Other than that, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.